Welcome to our podcast, which deals comprehensively with health and a healthy aging process. Today, we will look at an important topic: optimal protein intake for muscle building and longevity. Optimal protein intake is a controversial topic in nutritional science. While some experts recommend low protein intake for longevity, other sports scientists advocate high protein intake to maximize muscle strength. In this video, we'll answer the most common questions about protein intake for muscle building and longevity, and highlight an important new study that was recently published. How much protein do we really need every day? The general recommendation is to consume at least 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. However, this is only the minimum amount necessary to avoid protein deficiency and is not necessarily the optimal amount for our health and performance. Some longevity researchers, such as Professor Walter Longo, recommend sticking with this low protein intake. They rely on studies like this one from 2014, which was conducted on mice. This study tested 25 different diets with different proportions of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Surprisingly, this study showed that lower protein intake led to longer lifespan and better health. This effect is attributed to an enzyme called mTOR. mTOR is an important regulator of cell growth and metabolism. When we activate mTOR, we promote the building of muscles and proteins. Consuming proteins, particularly the amino acid leucine, strongly stimulates mTOR. The hypothesis is that by reducing protein intake, we can reduce mTOR activation and thereby extend lifespan. This theory is supported by research on a molecule called rapamycin, which inhibits mTOR. Rapamycin has shown that it can increase the life expectancy of male and female mice by about 20%. Rapamycin and its derivatives are used clinically to prevent organ rejection after kidney transplantation and to treat certain types of cancer. So reducing mTOR activation, whether through a low-protein diet or through rapamycin, seems like a compelling idea if you're a mouse. But our life is very different from that of a laboratory mouse. We are constantly exposed to viruses, bacteria, pollution, and attacks on our immune system. And in the real world, we want to optimize resilience, which means we want to strengthen our immune system and make our cells more resilient to stressors. And there is growing evidence that loss of muscle strength is linked to an increased risk of death. From the age of 40 onwards, we lose an average of around 1% of our muscle mass every year. This can lead to weakness, fatigue, and an increased risk of falls and injuries. Therefore, to prevent this muscle loss and loss of resilience, we want to maximize muscle mass and strength. This means that we build our muscles through exercise and diet when we are young, maintain our muscles in our middle age, and minimize muscle loss as we get older. An important factor for building and maintaining muscle is protein intake. Proteins are the building blocks of our muscles and provide us with the amino acids we need to repair and grow muscle cells. We know from several scientific studies that higher protein intake improves response to exercise. This means we can build more muscle if we eat more protein and exercise at the same time. But exactly how much protein do we need to maximize the benefits of exercise? A large 2018 meta-analysis that combined 18 separate randomized controlled trials found that the optimal protein intake for muscle building is 1.6 grams per kilogram of lean body weight per day. This is the amount of protein related to muscle mass without taking fat weight into account. Higher protein intake than this did not appear to provide any additional benefit to muscle performance. For an 80 kilograms person with a body fat percentage of 20%, this equates to about 102 grams of protein per day. That's a pretty high protein intake, accounting for about 25% of daily calories. To put that in perspective, beef contains about 25% protein, so you would need to eat about 400 grams of beef per day to get this close to reach. Of course, this is just an example, and there are many other protein-rich foods that you can eat, such as eggs, dairy products, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Well, that's the optimal protein intake for building muscle. But what about from a longevity perspective? A British medical journal study published in 2020 found that higher protein intake was associated with lower all-cause mortality. This effect was strongest for plant-based proteins, which come from foods such as beans, peas, lentils, tofu, and oats. From the current evidence we have today, protein intake of 1.6 grams per kilogram of lean body weight per day is beneficial for both muscle building and longevity. This guideline is based on lean body weight, so if you're overweight, there's an easy way to determine your ideal protein intake goal. You can multiply the height in centimeters by 0.75, or if you want to aim a little higher, you can multiply the height in centimeters by 1. Well, that's the daily protein goal. But what about the ideal protein timing throughout the day? We will present a pivotal new study that has changed our understanding of ideal protein timing. Although the body's ability to digest and absorb proteins is well established, it is still an open question as to how much protein one should eat per meal to optimize muscle building. Our muscles are constantly being remodeled, broken down, and rebuilt. This process allows the replacement of damaged proteins and the adjustment of muscle composition to the demands of training. The key to building muscle is to make sure we build more muscle than we lose. Previous research suggested that consuming 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal maximizes muscle protein synthesis in young, healthy adults. This is the process by which new muscle proteins are formed. Higher protein intake than this did not appear to provide any additional benefit. That's why the International Society of Sports Nutrition recommends consuming protein regularly, about every 3 to 4 hours. This corresponds to the typical human diet, but not the diet of many animals, which eat infrequent but large meals. That brings us to a new study that has changed our understanding of protein timing. This study showed that consuming 100 grams of protein resulted in longer and stronger muscle protein synthesis than consuming just 25 grams of protein. This is the process by which new muscle proteins are formed. This finding suggests that our bodies are able to utilize more protein from large meals than we previously thought. So it appears that total protein intake per day is the most important factor in muscle building and longevity, rather than specific protein timing. This finding is particularly relevant for people who use intermittent fasting to control their calorie intake. As long as they meet their daily protein goals and preferably consume their calories in the morning rather than in the evening, they are likely still able to maximize the benefits of exercise on their muscles. The catch is that this new study was a short-term study that only looked at one meal. It would be interesting to do a long-term study with a randomized control group where one group ate all of their protein in one meal, while another group divided the same amount of protein into 3 meals and see what effect that has on muscle performance and strength has. So there are still some unanswered questions, but protein timing seems to be less important than total protein intake throughout the day. However, there are also safety concerns regarding protein intake, which I will address later in the video. Another frequently asked question about protein timing is the timing around a workout. It used to be believed that you needed to eat a protein meal within 30 minutes of a workout to promote muscle building. But the latest scientific evidence suggests that it's the total protein intake during the day that matters, not the exact timing around a workout. So what are the best sources of protein? Well, when choosing protein sources, it is important to consider their leucine content. Leucine is an essential amino acid that plays an important role in triggering muscle protein synthesis. Some protein sources have a higher leucine content than others, such as whey protein, eggs, dairy products, beef, chicken, and fish. Other protein sources, such as plant-based proteins, are lower in leucine, but provide other health benefits, such as fiber, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Leucine is one of the key components that determine the quality of a protein source in terms of building and maintaining muscle. Leucine is an essential amino acid that plays an important role in triggering muscle protein synthesis. This is the process by which new muscle proteins are formed. Animal proteins are usually rich in leucine. This means that you typically need less of these proteins to meet your leucine needs compared to plant proteins. So if you eat a plant-based diet, you have to eat more protein to get the same amount of leucine. Chickpeas and lentils are great sources of protein, but they are often not enough to meet leucine requirements. If this is the case for you, you might also consider plant-based protein powders. Pea protein, for example, is an excellent source of high-quality protein. Not only is it rich in all essential amino acids, but is also easy to digest. Soy protein is another plant-based protein that contains all essential amino acids. And contrary to what you often hear on social media, there is very good evidence that soy protein has no effect on testosterone or estrogen levels. You could also try brown rice protein. Although it contains less leucine than pea or soy protein, it may be particularly beneficial for its ease of digestion. But here's the big question you often see on social media. Is high protein intake safe long term? You will see people claiming that high protein intake can put strain on the kidneys or increase the risk of osteoporosis by leaching calcium from the bones. So let's look at these claims. When it comes to kidney health, the safety concerns are scientifically untenable. Many studies show that high protein intake does not affect kidney function in healthy people, and the same goes for bone health. For this reason, the International Society of Sports Nutrition has released this statement. There is no scientific evidence of a link between higher dietary protein intake and side effects in healthy exercisers. However, there are a number of scientific papers documenting benefits of protein supplements on the health of multiple organ systems. So let's summarize the latest guidelines. The ideal daily protein goal for both muscle building and longevity is 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body weight per day. This target may need to be adjusted for overweight individuals by multiplying the height in centimeters by 0.75 to 1. Regarding protein timing, it appears that protein timing is not as important as once thought. Instead, total daily protein intake is more important for muscle building and overall health. When choosing your protein sources, also consider the leucine content. Animal proteins have a higher leucine content. So if you eat plant-based proteins, you may need to increase your total protein intake to achieve the same leucine intake. Stay tuned for more exciting insights from the world of longevity and healthy aging. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you don't miss any of our future episodes. See you next time.